Because being in the room around a table, you often don't notice how disengaged everyone is and that there may be only two people talking. And suddenly behind the screen remotely, everyone realized it was an amplifier. So long answer to your short question. I think it used to be more important than it's now, although now it's coming back. And I think the traveling or the in-person facilitation has its place as much as the online.
Yeah. And I remember a few years ago when I worked for a big German bank. We won't mention them because they are awesome, but I don't want people thinking I'm advertising the name. And I was sent to various countries. And what was really interesting for me was just seeing the different nuances in terms of culture. And I felt was perfectly sensible as a facilitator to do in one country, perhaps didn't go down so well in another country. For example, when we get people to work in groups and then we say, hey, would you like to now present back to the wider group? There were certain cultures that were scared stiff and they didn't want to present back because their boss was in the room and it was seen as a negative. So yeah, I guess it's interesting how internationally we are also very different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just remember the story you told me before hitting the record button about being in a space with all these nationalities, all working for the same company. And this also has an impact on how you learn to communicate with colleagues and interculturally, right? Yeah, I think it is fascinating how it's different. And then again, I think the online facilitation and the pandemic also brought so many different cultures into the same space that maybe we also learn to learn from the other cultures or to take our behavior less for granted. Because I also find it interesting, and I had it with primarily Asian groups where I invite them to go into a breakout room and to share with their partners their own experience and would then hear, oh, but I don't have expertise. I cannot talk about it. I'm like, ooh, we're Germans, the Dutch, the Americans. Of course, we can talk about our experience all the time. We don't need a theory or model before that. So yeah, good question.
Super interesting. And I'll tell you a quick story about my German colleagues. As Brits, we're very apologetic. And I used to come on a call and whilst everyone's talking, I would be curious. I'd have some questions. So I'd go, oh, I'm sorry. Can I just ask a question? And I remember my German colleagues like, Paddy, why do you feel the need to apologize for asking questions? Like, just ask the question. And I was like, oh, well, that's just the way we've been brought up. And she went, well, as a German, she said, I would never apologize. And it was just really interesting seeing that difference in culture. I'm not saying every German is probably like her, but it really brought home to me that, oh, wow, like actually, that's okay to do. I don't have to apologize.
And then apologize for apologizing.
There we go. There we go. So, Miriam, I'm thinking about this word facilitation. It's a very broad sort of word. And could you just break that down for us? What does the word actually mean in the context of what we're talking about?
So facilitation comes from the Latin origin facile, which means easy. So facilitation in its core means making processes easy or making things easy. In the context that we are talking about right now, hopefully, is to make it easy for groups. So basically to help groups to go from confusion to clarity to action by designing a process. And it's different from coaching, for instance, where coaches look on the inner journey and the inner goals, so personal development, and facilitators look for a common goal groups have that they can solve together. And facilitation becomes a superpower in this context because we have to believe that the groups have all the answers already. And it's our task to help them to grow larger than their parts. So it's our task to ask the right questions that would challenge them enough,